Hi and welcome to my channel. I'm Simon and today I'm back with one of my favourite videos to make every year and one of my favourite videos to watch on other people's channels, and that is my books of the year so far. So my books of 2022 so far. I think this video can only be beaten by the best books of the year videos. So anyway, there we go. I love watching other people's. It adds loads of books to my TBR. It's very bad for my bank, but hey ho, books are brilliant. So let's get cracking, and I'm going to go in reverse order. I have 15 books. I was going to do 10, but it just didn't seem quite right, so there we go. And actually my 15th book I haven't quite finished yet, but I have enough to know that it is going to be one of my favourites of the year, so I might rock it up a little bit more, and that is Shit Cassandra Saw by Gwen E. Kirby, which I just love this short story collection. I was intrigued by the cover being so bright and bold. I loved the title, and then the first story, the title of that had me hooked when it said Shit Cassandra Saw that she didn't tell the Trojans because at that point fuck them anyway. And I was like, oh my goodness, I have to read it. I was with my mum and nearly bought her one, and actually made it at some point, but the stories aren't all classical linked or classical myth linked as it goes on, but they are very much about women in history, some well known, some lesser known, but also just what it's like to be a woman now. And they're so clever, and they've got a little sprinkling of the other within them, and I just think they are utterly brilliant. I'm so excited to have discovered Gwen E. Kirby, and I can't wait to see what they write next. So that's my number 15. At 14, equally bonkers, the first book I read this year, and was one of the reasons I decided to do more than 10, because I just love saying this book's title. I did throughout the part of January that I was reading it. It's Night Bitch by Rachel Yoder. In fact, that wasn't quite right. Night Bitch. This is about Night Bitch, who is a woman who has had a child, and she's sort of lost her career as an artist because of it, and is sort of working out who she is as a woman, as a human, as a person. Yet actually, could she in fact be turning into a dog because she feels she's getting fangs? She feels like a tail could be growing, and we follow on from there. I will say the ending of this went a bit too far, but overall I just remember this being a wild ride, me loving reading it, excited to see what happened. I love the fact that Rachel Yoder kind of leaves it with us to decide what is going on elsewhere around the book, if that makes sense, without spoiling anything. I just thought it was brilliant, so well done, Night Bitch. You are number 14 of my year so far. At 13, I'm lucky for some, but not for Candice Carty-Williams, we have People Person, which I love because it's all about half siblings, and I am a half brother to 4 half siblings, and it's a really interesting relationship because the two that I don't know so well, because I didn't know my dad for a long time, there is that half sibling relationship, and we're sort of working each other out and stuff. And then with the ones that I've known since birth, I don't feel like that's there. And this looks at what happens when one sibling, Dimple, gets herself involved in something really quite dark and twisted. Like, my jaw dropped on chapter 2. I was like, what? It's how then her half siblings rally around her, but it's also a book that's very much about what it's like to be black in Britain, and looks at the some of the minor ways in which people can be horrifically racist to people. I mean, there's a character called Karen in here, a neighbour called Karen. You can imagine what Karen's like, and I felt like Candice Carty-Williams was writing something really poignant and important whilst also having fun with it and making it a gripping yarn in essence, but also looking at that half sibling relationship. So yeah, fabulous. Then we have The Paper Palace by Miranda Cowley-Heller at number 12. I feel like I'm doing Top of the Pops. In at 12, The Paper Palace by Miranda Cowley-Heller, which tells of it starts off with a woman whose name I've forgotten. One of my favourite books of the year, and I've forgotten. Elle. Lots of characters' names in my head this year. Well, always, I've been reading for years. Anyway, moving on, waffling on again, as is my wont. We meet Elle after she has had she's had sex with her childhood friend and sort of sweetheart, and they've always had this sort of tension between them, whilst her husband and his wife are in the house not far away, and we follow on 24 hours from then, but also we go backwards and look at their relationship and how it's built over time. And I just thought it was brilliant. I love the sense of place, I love the atmosphere of the book. I thought what it did in terms of changing perspectives and therefore shifting narratives and changing perspective was really clever. I love the back and forth. I just thought it was brilliant. So yeah, I really loved that. Another Woman's Prize longlister at number 11 is The Bread the Devil Need by Lisa Allen Agostini. I will never forget Alethea as a character. She's a woman who from the outside, well, she thinks from the outside she looks like she's got it all. She's got a really good job, she's in a relationship, but actually people can see the cracks in the veneer that she's putting out there, that her relationship isn't very good and that she's being abused by her partner. And after a woman is killed by her partner, people are like, this could happen to you, Alethea. And the energy and vibrancy of Alethea as a character is just wonderful. I loved the lilt of this novel. I loved the characters, particularly Alethea. I just, yeah, for her alone, that's what gets this book in my top 15 or top 11 in that case. In at 10 is Elena Ferrante. I know, I can't believe it either. This is The Lost Daughter, and considering I've been very lukewarm about Elena Ferrante so far, I was really shocked how much I loved this, but I think I'm going to really like the shorter, sharper Ferrante novels as opposed to the bigger ones, because I think when she's condensed, these books are prickly and spiky, and this is about a woman who's on holiday and she kind of becomes obsessed with this young woman, her daughter, and their doll, and at the same time she's sort of unraveling with her relationship with her daughters. And I shall say no more than that, other than it's brilliant and can't recommend it enough. Then, is it 9? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, yeah. At 9, very short. It's just a short story, frankly. But I say just a short story. That's wrong of me to say, because it's more than a short story. It's an incredible short story and one I absolutely loved. It's Galatea by Madeline Miller, which is the retelling of the Galatea myth. I thought this was done so brilliantly. It gets creepier and creepier as it goes on. The ending is fantastic. I'm not going to spoil it for anyone. And yeah, bloody loved it. Can't wait for her next novel, which I think is going to be about Persephone. So we have that. One of the sauciest books that I read this year, in fact, we've got a lineup of saucy books now. At number 9, we have Just by Looking at Him by Ryan O'Connell. I had the pleasure of interviewing Ryan about this book, and it was an absolute treat. Some of you might know Ryan from his Netflix series Special, which is about a fictionalised character called Ryan who is queer and has cerebral palsy. And in this book we meet Elliot, who is queer and has cerebral palsy and is in the perfect relationship. His partner even has the perfect penis, but sometimes the perfect things, even penises, can get boring, and so he has this sort of, it's almost an affair, but it sort of isn't, with a sex worker called River, and slowly things start to unravel. And I thought it was brilliant about difference, about disability, about visibility, about queerness, about what it's like to be disabled within the queer community, a minority within minorities. It's also about preconceived ideas and perceptions that we have on people. Very funny, very saucy, brilliant, really, really loved it. Can't recommend it enough. There we go. Speaking of saucy, in at number 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, yeah, is one of my absolute favourite living authors. Just love their work. It's Akwaeke Emeze's You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty. This is all about a woman who, her husband died several years ago. She has this tryst on a rooftop at the start of the book, which is really sexy. Well, not on the rooftop, but there's this tension, and then they go off to the bathroom. I shall say no more. You need to read the book. Filth. And then it's actually how she then meets someone else, and there's this tension, and it keeps going, and I won't spoil it anymore, but it looks at sexuality, it looks at bisexuality brilliantly, which I don't think is done enough, and does it in a really brilliant way. It's also the sort of perfect summer read. It goes off to tropical islands. It just celebrates being a romance novel without trying to, like, this isn't an author saying, right, here's a romance novel, but make it literary. This is just like, I really like this genre. I'm going to have a go at it, and I'm going to celebrate it and love it. And here is the result. And it's blinking brilliant. There's a character in here called Joy, who literally is a joy from the beginning to the end. Every time she comes on the page, she does as her name suggests. Yeah, I just thought this was fantastic and had me hooked. I think it was the first book I read in my 40s, actually, on a tropical island, which is possibly also why I loved it, but I think I would have loved it even if I just read it at home in the bath. Anyway, moving on to number 6, which is a short, sharp classic, and what many describe as one of the most depressing books of all time, but I thought it was brilliant. It's Ethan Frome by Edith Wharton, and I must read a lot more of Edith Wharton's work, because I absolutely love The House of Mirth. That's a bit more of a stonker-ish maybe not quite a stonker, but it's a bigger book because, well, it just would be, wouldn't it? It's very short. All about, well, we find out about a man called Ethan Frome, and when we meet him, there's lots of rumours about him and the situation he finds himself in, the house he is with his wife and her cousin, and then we get to see what happens, and it leads towards a very dramatic, tragic ending. I thought this was wonderful. I thought it was so evocative. I thought it was so beautifully written, and yeah, it is bloody depressing, but I just think it's an absolute hit with me. Like, I don't always like jolly books. It's quite rare that I recommend happy books, actually, so well done to these two. But yeah, I just thought this was absolutely incredible. It's so epic, yet in so few pages. I just think it's amazing. And on a different day, that could possibly be a little bit higher. We'll see how things go as the year goes on. Then we have, this isn't out until September, so I'm a dreadful tease, but it's Stone Blind by Natalie Haynes, which is her retelling of the Medusa myth, and it is brilliant. The voice of the Gorgonion in this is so snarky and wry and so rude about Perseus. It's just phenomenal, but also it's a very painful book to read. There's a lot in here about rape and around the fact that, and this kind of, it scared me how prevalent it is now when it was in ancient civilization, that basically if a god raped a beautiful woman, be they a goddess, be they a nymph, be they a gorgon, be they a mortal, it was always the woman's fault, never the god's. And the fact that, like, the blame culture hasn't changed from then until now, I think makes this book all the more pertinent. But at the same time, very much like I was saying about Candice Carty-Williams with People Person, and the way that Candice writes about the dark themes, but does so that make it a gripping yarn, make it entertaining, but kind of with this punch that it packs. I feel very similar about Stone Blind by Natalie Haynes. I think this is just a stunning, stunning book. I think it's also a great if you're trying to get into ancient classics and all of the myths and legends. Yeah, phenomenal. The biggest surprise for me this year so far is at number 4, and that is The Promise by Damon Galgut, which 4 is appropriate because this is set over 4 different funerals in one family in South Africa, and it's set over different decades, and we start with the death of the mother, and we hear about a promise that she wanted made on her deathbed that isn't kept, and we follow as that promise isn't kept, and it's almost like a curse has kind of been put on this family. We then follow through 3 more deaths, and we follow these siblings in particular, and we get to see the ins and outs of that. But what I think Damon Galgut does brilliantly is South Africa is very much in the background of the book and its history, but at the same time he doesn't tell you everything. There's just enough of a glimmer that you want to go and Google and find out more, and I think that's really, really clever, because it was very much there, but sort of the domestic dramas of this family are much more at the forefront. It also takes the mickey or makes death quite funny quite often, and funerals quite funny, and the whole shebang around death and dead bodies and what happens to us, and I think that's really important. I think grief and death are things that are going to happen to all of us at some point, but yet we don't like to talk about them, and I think it's important that we do, and this book does that. I also love the fact it's got an omnipresent narrator, so we go into different perspectives, including those that we might not like, and yeah, I just thought it was utterly phenomenal, a real surprise to me, and I feel like out of all the Booker winners in the last few years, this has had the least shouting out about it, so I'm shouting out about it. So there we go. Then in at 3 we have Sarah Schmidt's Blue Hour. Now this is a very dark book indeed. This is about a mother and daughter relationship. We get to meet the daughter first in the 70s. She's fleeing from her partner with her daughter and keeps looking in the rearview mirror to see if she's being followed, and then we go into Kitty's perspective, decades before, when she's in the first love of her life with a man going off to war. He comes back completely changed, but they still try and have this relationship, and it's how the trauma and bitterness in some ways from what's happened to them lingers and carries on, and yeah, it gets very, 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 very dark, but I think it's very, 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 very good, and can't recommend enough. If you liked A Little Life, you'll love it. If you didn't, possibly not for you. It's not a torture porn book, but there's just a lot of, not that I actually think A Little Life is torture porn, but that's what it's labelled, but there is a lot of difficult subject matter in here of all kinds, be it, I don't want to say because of spoilers, but there's just a lot of triggers in here. Then we have at number 2, probably no surprise to anyone, Violets by Alex Hyde. This short, sharp book told in vignettes, but also kind of in poetry, is just incredible. It made me cry. I loved it. It's about 2 women called Violet, one who loses her child just as her husband is going away to war, so this leaves her in this horrible sort of limbo and this kind of what's the term I want to use, just yeah, this chasm really. And then we meet another Violet who gets pregnant by a soldier while he's in Wales with her, and she flees thinking she can escape what's happened, but obviously she can't, but she goes to help the war effort in Italy. And we follow the 2 stories and see how they may or may not meet at the end. It's just incredible. Cried ridiculously at the end, but just hugged it at the same time because I thought it was so powerful and wonderful. And yeah, there's that. And last but not least, because it's number 1, you all know what this book is going to be. It is, of course, The Island of Missing Trees by Elif Shafak, which tells the story of, well, Ada, a young girl who her mother died the Christmas before. This Christmas she's been given the homework of finding out about her family history from a family member. She knows nothing. She's going through a difficult time at school in all sorts of different ways, as we discover, but it's how she doesn't know because her parents didn't tell her what happened before her mother died, and her father won't talk to her about it, but we find out what happened in Cyprus with her parents passed through the narration of a fig tree. And it's joyful, it's beautiful. It looks at how we are all islanders wherever we may be, we're all people, because it looks at the divide in Cyprus and the history around that and the conflict. It's also very much a book about nature and the importance of trees, but also just nature in general. Like, there's so much in here that's to love. And then there's also a love story in the middle that I think is wonderful, and there's a scene with a parrot that made me cry for about 45 minutes. So there we go. That's my number 1 book of 2022 so far. And there are the other 14. I'll probably drop them now, which I don't really want to do. So there we go. Let me know your thoughts on these books in the comments below. Which of these have you read? Have you read them because you saw them on this channel? And if so, what did you make of them? Did you love them as much as I did? Did you not? Let's debate all of that good stuff and tell me what your top 3 books of 2022 are so far, so I might get inspired to go and pick them up on my travels in various different bookshops. So yeah, that's that. One of my most anticipated, excited videos to make, and I can't wait to see loads of them on other people's channels. I'm asking for you to recommend smaller or lesser known channels to me in the comments below. Do that along with your 3 top books of 2022 and any thoughts on the books that I've got in my top 15. And I will see you in another video very, very soon. Bye.